Good morning, everybody. And it really will, just because of the face mask, be helpful to me to get names, because I hope to be here more than a few months in my job. So I want to be able to build relationships in time, of course, but it will take some time. So thank you all for coming, and welcome to Rutgers, New Brunswick. This isn't the presidency I expected, no surprise there. It is quite remarkable. I think I was introduced around January 22nd, give or take a day. And I was building my agenda for the next few weeks, and then everything turned upside down. And then I would say in early March discovered, well, I can't remember exactly when, Pete, the news came down from the state government about the financial appropriation for the university. If you're like me, everything has collapsed. I mean, yesterday might as well have been 4 months ago, might have been 3 days ago. In any event, once the finances became clear, it was evident that my presidency would be different. And then you add to that fact, of course, this moment of what I called in my day one message a few days ago, this moment of racial reckoning, and my presidency is different. And I will say on the latter part, because I am a specialist in African American history and also being African American, there is a heightened sense of purpose for me in this particular moment. That I am trying to be hopeful, and that's my default anyway, that we all as a society, and certainly as a university, come out in a better place than we are, than we were 5-6 months ago, or 5-6 weeks ago, when very few people knew who George Floyd was. So going back to this notion of the presidency I didn't expect as it relates to COVID, I just sent out the announcement about our fall plans. These were plans that we've been actually ready to announce for a while, I'll confess, but because we are in this unique moment of transition, we felt the need to delay the announcement to make sure that the sitting president who'd be responsible for maintaining the adherence to that plan was the person who was in office at the time of the announcement. So that's where we are. I'm actually grateful that we delayed the announcement a bit, because as we've seen over the last, let's call it 10 days, this really terrifying surge across the country, that I think it makes this decision that much more sensible. In fact, I think if I had to wager, you're going to see more presidents who might have announced plans for reopening in a particular way start to change their plans in the wake of this terrifying surge. That's not for me to announce on their behalf, of course. I just won't be surprised to see it. So the plan that we announced today is driven overwhelmingly as the first priority, the health and safety of the students and the staff and the faculty. I don't think I need to rehearse why that's important or why that we're taking that as our first approach. That priority, though, is not going to change, of course. The plan builds upon work of several hundred people working behind the scenes. I was brought into those conversations officially around mid-May, and at that point, what is now the reopening Rutgers plan was in its near complete form at that point. We've been relying upon our experts, whether it's experts in the world of student affairs or housing or, of course, epidemiology and public health and medicine to arrive at the place where we are today. This is a community decision, a community plan, and mine is the voice that's announcing it. Each of the chancellors will be issuing very specific details about how the plan affects their particular unit. I mean, as you all know, Rutgers is a complex organism, so what works as far as housing or issues in New Brunswick will not translate in the same way in Newark. Just be mindful of that fact. And also the chancellors and their provosts and then their deans have much closer or finer sense of texture of how to implement the university mandated concept, how to apply it at their local unit level. So those plans are going to be rolling out. In fact, Brian, have some of them gone out already? Okay, they've gone out already. Thank you. So the very basic is most of our classes will be taught remotely this fall. There will be exceptions, of course, for those courses for which there is no other way to teach the course. Certain practicums, especially in the performing arts, certain engineering classes, certain science classes, and that is what will be dictated determined at the local level, and chancellors and provosts have been working on those lists of classes already. Part of the reason that we've made the decision to go online is that, especially in New Brunswick, where we have the largest dorms in the Rutgers system, is that in order to, being in line with CDC guidelines, state guidelines about how we can house people safely, we think we can only house 25 to 30% of our students in dormitories already. And we can only house up to a third of your student population. That already is going to start driving the issues of how many, what are the odds of actually having classes in person. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that the online experience is robust. We turned on a dime in ways that I would never have anticipated. We in higher ed generally, back in the spring when universities shut down in the course of a matter of weeks. That's unheard of for a university. But now we've had a lot of time to, we in this case are the provosts in particular and their deans have had a lot of time to train up their faculty in best practices, new best practices when it comes to online education. So I feel very confident that we will be generating a very high quality product as everybody should expect of us. For those who are going to be coming onto campus, we'll be abiding by all those things that we know for a fact are important. Social distancing, good hygiene, the use of face coverings at every appropriate moment. They'll be incorporated into the every operational aspect of the university. In the Returning to Rutgers document, they go into great detail about how we will be managing these issues and how important it is that everybody comply with these issues. We know that they work. We do not yet, if anybody's curious, I'm sure some of you are, we do not yet know the outlook for the fall football season or other fall sports. The Council of Presidents and Chancellors, it's the Big Ten chancellors and presidents, are in intense conversations about this, but we will be following the guidance of the conferences, and we are certainly keeping a close eye on how things develop with major National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball. So more information on that front will be coming out very soon. If I had to guess, within 2 weeks there'll be a final declaration. We can't wait much longer than that. Finally, the last thing I'll say is that we are keeping, as we made this announcement for the fall, we're already keeping our eye on the spring. It is my fervent hope that we will be much closer to capacity in the spring, with many more of our classes being taught in person. That is the ideal component, of course, for all the aspects of what we want to deliver at Rutgers. But it's too early to declare what that new normal is going to look like or when we can activate that new normal. We'll be keeping you abreast of those developments as they come forward. With that, I turn it over to you for any questions you might have. Am I just going to call? Yeah, we'll start here and then here next.
How's it going? Bob Macon from Home News Tribune, MonsterJersey.com. Just wanted to ask about the situations with the layoffs of the dining service workers and the limited number of part-time faculty members that can have maintained positions. Are you gonna try to work that out, or is that going to remain in place? And what is going to happen going forward as far as staff and faculty is concerned, with like furloughs and layoffs and that kind of stuff?
There's like 6 different questions in there, actually. So let me address it at a broad level, and then we'll see where we go from there. And if you need a quick follow-up, that's fine, but then we'll come over here. A lot of the conversation, I mean, this is a conversation happening with the labor management team working together, of course. It's complicated. There are seasonal layoffs that have always happened at Rutgers for employees with like dining hall workers, and they come back in the fall and you just keep repeating the cycle. So there are some layoffs that are natural. There are furloughs and layoffs are very different dynamics at the university of how we can enact one or the other. So that's part of an ongoing conversation within the labor management group when it comes to furloughs specifically. I'm acutely aware of the challenges facing part-time lecturers. This is a nationwide phenomenon. It's not unique to Rutgers. I deeply believe in having as many of our full-time faculty teaching as much as possible as a starting position, but that's something separate from this conversation right now, dealing with things on the ground. So that's also an evolving conversation where that lands. I'm trying to remember different aspects of your question. One thing I think we do need to get, let me think. Since I've been brought into this conversation, let's just say mid-May, in terms of being, maybe the start of May, in terms of these particular issues, at the standpoint of being advised on X, Y, or Z, or this is being updated, not advised. What for me has become, since it's now my job, has become frustrating is that we have been talking and talking and talking. And the we here is everybody in the labor management arrangement. I would love to see real concrete action. Now, of course, both sides have said they've made concrete proposals, but we need to have a deadline to make decisions. And so I want to see us to find a way to speed up the process. We can have a decision of some type. Because right now, we on both sides, I think we are doing more gesticulating than actually moving to a concrete decision. And I'm not assigning blame for anybody in that. I just think that's from what I gather as an outsider, that's what it seems like to me. So I think we're moving towards more clarity pretty soon on that front too. What that answer is going to be, I don't know at this point. That's quite honest, an answer. Did I get most of what you're talking about? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Thompson from NBC New York. Two questions. For what you do have on campus, will there be any kind of testing protocol for both students and faculty who will be interacting in a closed room like this for an hour or however long that lab may be, or
Yeah.
working hours?
Yeah.
And then the other question I would have is financially, does this have any impact on the university, whether positive or negative, for this fall semester?
Is Tony Calcato? Oh, Tony's there in the corner. So I'll lean on Tony, who is the chief operating officer, who's been the person who's the lead on all of this. So let me answer. I'm going to turn it to you about the testing, but I'm going to address the financial component. This had a huge financial impact on the university, partly because it's had a huge financial impact on the state. And so our appropriations have been pulled back. Now, we did benefit in the most recent budget passed that there is a level of recuperation, not as much as we would have liked, of course. We're very grateful for what we did get back from the state. But there's a very serious shortfall coming down the line. And, but this is not a Rutgers-specific challenge. This is in the world of higher education. Now, there will be testing, and I'll turn it to Tony to be specific about it. But even that, that is not a free phenomenon. Now, we do benefit because of the saliva tests that were generated here. We're in a much better position than, say, our other Big Ten schools. I mean, this is just from an earlier phone call. Where testing, we know we have to do it, but they're less certain about how they're going to do it. We're in a much better shape that we can test. Actually, I think I know the numbers, but I don't want to misstate, so I'll turn it to Tony. So we'll be okay in that regard. But the financial impact is very serious. It is, the arithmetic cannot be avoided here. We can have policy conversations, whatever you want, but the arithmetic is unavoidable. That there's going to have to be cuts in our system in order just to get to the point of we're back in balance and be able to be the university that we need to be. That's
Can I follow up on that?
very quickly, yeah.
Do you have anything in mind as to how you're going to deal with that? As to how you would actually, we've heard about, I think, some furloughs of cafeteria workers because we know cafeteria food, that sort of thing. Beyond that, are you looking at other cuts?
There are a lot of things that are in play. I'm not able to answer your question right now because was it just last week, Pete, when we got the announcement about how much money we were getting? Is that right? It was just last week. So we were, Mike Gower, Chief Financial Officer, has been doing all kinds of different budget scenario planning, but it wasn't until, I think, June 30th, June 29th, when we actually got the numbers. So give us a little bit of time, and we'll be able to be more concrete in that regard. I'm going to turn it over to Tony to talk about the testing really quickly.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we are fortunate in having our BHS and led by an epidemiologist who is of renowned quality, I might add, who's predicted much of what's gone on here. and predicted what this would look like as it unfolded from the first week in January. And that's been a phenomenal help as we've planned and as we've worked our way through, and as we plan for the fall and hopefully soon for the spring. We are RBHS, and our medical team from RBHS is putting together the protocols now as we speak, looking at the best practices in building a testing program. Understand that there is no great testing program anywhere. Everything we're doing, we're building from scratch as we look through. In addition to testing, we're looking at contact tracing. Our School of Public Health is working very closely with the state. We will be launching here as well with our own contact tracers, working with public health, but the protocols will be coming out soon. It's not just testing for testing's sake, but it's testing so that it's meaningful and it helps us as we plan, as we move forward, but most importantly, how do we keep everyone safe here in our community? And that safetiness is what students take back as well, right, to their families. So even though we house probably over 18,000 students normally, our one major concern was if we have a lot of people in our dorms and they go home on weekends, what happens? How does that spread? Where are we going with this? And as the president noted, we see what's happening all around. But we can do thousands of tests a day. I'll also hold a number. But thousands of tests a day we can do, we have the ability to do. Now it's how do we best work them?
Yes. And then over here next. Yes. Oh, about which students? That is being led by a couple of different concepts. I mean, one concept, facts on the ground. I mean, international students who are stuck in the United States, of course, we will welcome them back. What had been in place at Rutgers before I arrived here is that also students who we knew were housing insecure, we would find a way to support them too. But one of the things that's folded in now that we've announced the concept of what classes, of the extent to which undergrad classes will be online or not, that will be led at the local chancellor unit level when it comes to housing. And also the housing is really quite different in Newark and in Camden and in Brunswick. I'm not an authority on it. All my trips here were canceled in April and May, so I can't tell you exactly how they're different, but I've been told they're quite different. But I mean, we house normally 18,000 in New Brunswick, and in Newark, it's a few thousand. Is that right? And
18,000 total, 16 here, around 1,500, 1,800.
Thank you. So the numbers are all over. 16,000 here. Another, what did you say? 1,500 roughly.
Yeah, almost approaching 2,000.
Almost 2,000 in Newark, and then 800 in Camden. In case people didn't hear that. So that'll be dictated at the local level, and I'm very fine with that. It makes a lot more sense. Yes. That's an excellent question. What's the next one?
Anyway, talking about the football
Yeah.
team, what we've seen across colleges all across the country is if your football team goes down, so do other sports, like football.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were saying 2 more weeks before that happens, but if it doesn't happen, you talk about the financial impact. What would be the further financial impact
If we lose football this season, what's the further financial impact? Well, it's serious. The reason I'm pausing is because the actual numbers, they aren't concrete yet, because there's a lot of negotiations happening with the television networks that are at the Big Ten commissioner level about what the literal impact is. So I can't give you actual numbers right now, but it's very serious. And it relates to the number of games that are on air, potential bowl game revenue. I mean, it's just a whole suite of different things. And yeah, that does have a real impact on other sports. The fact of the matter is also, though, is football is by far our most expensive sport at any university. So the biggest effect will be within football. But there's a larger question here, is that if football is not able to proceed for health reasons, safety reasons, men's and women's basketball are almost contact sports, essentially, with less protective gear. What happens there? So there's a lot of, downstream issues that we have to think through, and that we will know a lot more about football in 2 weeks, and know a heck of a lot more when it comes to sports like basketball, which is technically a winter sport, but really starts in the fall. We'll know a lot more about that by watching the NBA, to be honest. If they can't protect their players and their support staff with all of their resources, I don't know how the Big Ten or any other college sports conference will be able to do so. So I don't know in grand detail how to answer the question, except for the effect of no season will be material. There is still the chance, as far as I'm concerned personally, of the idea of a spring season. Now that brings football season, which brings many other complications to it, but it's still in concept a possibility. If this were a press conference were happening in 2 weeks, it'd be a more definitive answer for you. Yes? Yes.
Sticking with the financial situation, can Rutgers students expect any kind of tuition reductions or other fees when it comes to the fall 2020 semester?
Yeah, it's a very fair and expected question. The reduction in tuition has happened. And that was when the Board of Governors did not, or kept the tuition flat. The tuition was, and you can't quote me here because I'm not giving you, the tuition was set to go up, I'll just say ballpark 3%. I don't know if that's literally accurate or not, but it's around that neighborhood. And then President Barchi made the case for that not to happen in light of this the potential for this to happen in terms of going remote. The fact is, though, that running a university is exquisitely expensive, and tuition is a major role in allowing us to employ our faculty, for instance, and employ our researchers and employ our dining hall workers, et cetera. So it is in order to deliver the quality education that we want to deliver, we expect to deliver, the tuition is built into that machine. And we do charge, I think, really the bare minimum. Now, you may feel differently, and parents may feel differently, because I know it's not inexpensive, but it is hard to imagine charging less given the complexity and the infrastructure demands of Rutgers in terms of what it costs for attendance. Over here, and then we'll come back. Yes?
I'm wondering if you're seeing, as you're waiting to make this announcement, is down on freshmen. Has any impact on the financial situation as well?
Oh, it certainly has an impact. There's no doubt about it. The numbers for New Brunswick, if I'm not mistaken, before the announcement, so as of 3 hours ago, we're off about 3%, something like that. So we were actually really quite pleased, given the range of possibilities. 3% was a pleasant surprise. There is no doubt that the number will increase in the wake of this announcement. Although I'll be surprised that many people are surprised by the announcement, to be honest, given what's happening in the country right now. So I don't know where the numbers are going to land. Absolutely, if we lose students, even if it's only for a semester, that has a real impact. But it's the tough part about this situation is that we can do all kinds of modeling and numbers guess, but the fact is we're guessing. We're really guessing. And there is nothing, you think of college admissions, it's become very predictive. You can run data analytics and you kind of know where you're going to land if you have a sophisticated machine. This, we don't have a machine for this. We're doing the best that we can given everything. And especially given that our peers are also either they made announcements months ago that I think were irresponsible because they were just fanciful and not being honest, or they are making announcements this week. We just don't know. So my fingers are crossed that our numbers will hold, because people will still recognize the great value of a Rutgers education. And I think it's a fantastic value, and it's a fantastic education. And we'll deal with the consequences of things going down. This goes back to your earlier question about the financial impact. This is going to have to be built into it, and we'll know a lot more in a month's time. Since I'm going to ask him first, oh wait, you've also asked a question first. We'll come this way. Part of my learning, folks.
Real quick question, and then
I have to confess brand-new president ignorance at this point. I think I know the answer, but I'd be guessing, so I'd rather not comment.
Wasn't sure about that. Next question, what message would you send to a freshman, junior, senior, whatever, who is looking at a fall remote education?
Yeah.
And then I have one more after that.
What I would say to, I mean, I have a rising junior in college, so I would say to students at any grade level, and same thing I'll tell my daughter, this is not easy for anybody, and everybody's in the same boat. Now, when I say that, it depends on the type of institution. I mean, by the same boat, we're in a boat of uncertainty, right? So if you're going to small liberal arts college right now that doesn't have an endowment, that's a very scary proposition for an administration to think about. If you're going to an elite private with a huge endowment, they can manage fine from a financial set, but a lot of those schools rely on residential education as the thing that makes them different. So they've got a different kind of challenge. At Rutgers, we are a mixture of all of these things by our size and by each of our campuses being a bit different. So we've got a different kind of challenge. But the fact is, it's going to be hard on everybody. We should all give one another a bit of grace during this moment, frankly. And that in this particular moment, when it comes to an online education, I would expect that the fall would be much better than what they experienced in the emergency planning in the spring. I certainly would expect that. And that the sooner that they remain as committed as we are as an administration to actually practicing all those basics I talked about earlier, social distancing, proper hygiene, et cetera, the sooner we can be back in business and be present. But you know as well as I do that 20-year-olds feel invincible. Their whole life is waiting for them. They are the best health of their life, most likely, in broad strokes, and that they can be quite confused about all these basic inconveniences of this moment. And we've seen this being played out in the country where they are now our silent vectors of spreading this virus because they aren't wearing these, they aren't being mindful. So I'd ask them to recognize this is hard on everybody, and please do your civic best and wear those face masks when you're out in public, and please fight your urge to socially congregate all the time.
Another question I had, as your background with African American studies, with Black Lives Matter, with the diversity of Rutgers University, how are you going to try to incorporate that into what this university does moving forward, considering all the challenges we're seeing across the country, whether it's police action, whether it's reaction from people who are not ready to accept certain new norms in society?
Welcome to my nightly nightmare. This is good questions. The fact, I said this in my day one message, and I could not be more sincere. We've all seen it, you've all reported on it. The era of simply saying you have my thoughts and prayers is over. They are important. It's important to be empathetic, but that's not enough anymore. And so I was being quite serious when I said that I agreed with those people who said it's the time for concrete actions. Now, I hope that people will give me the chance to establish those concrete actions. I announced that on day one of my presidency. I made the commitment. I expect to be held accountable to it, but not on day 6 or not on day 13. So by the end of the summer, before then, but you're going to start hearing from Pete McDonough or from whoever you hear things from at the university about different kinds of concrete changes that we're putting in place here. A lot of them are going to be back office things, to be honest, that the kinds of things that one would expect moments of change when a new president comes on board, but a lot of them will be in concrete, that can be measured in concrete terms when it comes to issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's coming. I'd rather not say anything more than that right now. Some plans are actively being worked on, but they have not been confirmed. That could be quite important to the university. So in due course. Here really quick and then over here.
There's been talk about Rutgers changing its name because
Yes.
Rutgers was a slave. Is there any validity to that? And also, include the salaries of the top administrators. There's 25 people at Rutgers who make more than $1 million.
25 people at Rutgers make more than $1 million. I think 22 of them are faculty, I think. Pretty sure I'm darn close on that. And they are the faculty who are doing cutting edge work. I mean, they are not overpaid by their field. This is the market price, and that they are doing the work that's saving people's lives on a regular basis. So people talk about overpaid administrators. I will say that Rutgers does not overpay its administrators. Now, people may say, I'm overpaid. That's fine. They can make that claim. But no, it's been quite sobering to see as a new president wanting to build an administration in certain ways, like I can't afford. Rutgers is not in the practice that I would pay people the way that I'd like to see them paid, being quite honest with you. But we do have to be really mindful of the fact, that's why I said this is a moment of shared sacrifice and I took a 10% cut for the entire year. Is it symbolic to me? Well, yeah, it's symbolic to me, but that's 2 or 3 different jobs for different people, the amount that I'm foregoing. Seems pretty reasonable as far as I'm concerned. Now, you asked about Rutgers as a namesake. I have not received it myself. Well, it might be in the president's official inbox. I've not seen it myself. I've heard of a petition circulating about changing the names of residences on campus that were the namesakes of former Rutgers presidents, or early Rutgers presidents. And then I've heard about the idea of changing the name of the university. We're not going to change the name of the university. I'll just come out and say it right now. That does not mean I'm opposed to having a conversation about it. Quite the opposite. I'm very happy to talk about, in fact, we need to talk about in this country more often than we do now, the complicated legacies of namesakes and the complicated ways in which old institutions are woven in through with what I call blood money, through slavery. Frankly, in this country, in any institution that has been around since prior to 1863 that's still around, that was an important institution, is going to have slave money woven into it, north, south, east, west. That is just the fact on the ground. That does not free those institutions from having conversations about it. One of the great changes over the last 10 to 15 years is universities beginning to talk about it in honest ways. Rutgers, I think, has done a fabulous job in this regard with the Scarlet and Black 3-volume set. 3rd volume, I think, is set to come out soon. Leaning on our own incredible researchers and scholars to talk about our own legacy in this regard. So I'm quite proud of what Rutgers has produced already in this regard. And I'm open to having more of these conversations. I mean, I'm a historian, for goodness sakes. I'm not afraid to talk about these things in the past. Now, the reason we're not going to change the name is that names have value that exceeds someone's existence. So in the case of the namesake, going back to my earlier comment, where are we going to find names, if we go back historically speaking, that don't have blood money related to them? It's a difficult endeavor. What we have to do, though, for keeping the name, is we have to talk about it, period. Now, does that go to other buildings on campus? No, that kind of insistence does not go to other buildings on campus. Because the COVID consequences of COVID meant I couldn't visit any campuses in April and May like I was planning to. I barely know my way. I know how to get here from my house. I did it without Waze. I mean, literally did it without Waze for the first time today. I was pretty excited, although this moment I wasn't quite sure, but I guessed right. So I will beg your patience in terms of understanding the different buildings. I know Scarlet and Black Commission, that's not the name of it, the commission on, what's the name of the commission that resulted in Scarlet and Black? What was it? Slave and Disenfranchised Population Commission that resulted in Scarlet and Black, has taken the topic up. And I think, I have incredible respect for the scholars behind that project, and I think the work they did was really, really quite excellent. And I think it holds up. But I will say this, I've heard that at least one of the buildings named after an early president is actually not our finest dormitory, I'll put it that way. So if I were, let's work with me for the moment, if I were to rename the building after someone from a historically disenfranchised population, but it's a horrible building, that building's never coming down. That doesn't make any sense to me either. So there needs to be different kinds, I'm not even being facetious about that. We need to think in lots of different ways about these issues. But I can promise the students and the staff and the faculty who raise these issues with me, I will not shy away from talking about it. That doesn't mean that we're going to make a change, though. Those are two different things. Oh, here, yes, thank you.
How are you? Chuck O'Donnell, Tappan to New Brunswick. As somebody who's made his life's work studying history, how does it resonate with you personally that the school's named after a slave?
It's the United States. I mean, the history of this country, its original sin is racial slavery as far as I'm concerned. So for me if I were to walk around, look, I do the history of trauma, essentially. If I were to walk around feeling bludgeoned by every name that I see that has a connection to the slave, I couldn't get out of bed, okay? Growing up in the Upper South in Maryland, and seeing all the names everywhere of traitors to the nation that were celebrated on statues or in street names, it's just the DNA of this country. It's a warped logic. I love this country, but this is part of it, and it's not a good look. So for me, I'm about to turn 53. I'm acculturated to the phenomenon. The words don't really faze me in that way. The illogic or the lies around the putting up of Confederate statues in the 1920s and saying this is all about honoring their heritage. It's just a flat out lie. The lies about the Confederate battle flag being put up, this is heritage, it was flown in the 1950s as an anti-civil rights measure. It's a flat out lie. That stuff I don't have much patience for at all, as you can imagine. But, walking around, frankly, I'll dare say I think I'm pretty good at what I do as a professional. And I have a sense of confidence about it. And I feel like I am better than a name on a building, that I'm better than the name, like my existence, my humanity, my complexity cannot be reduced by the fact that Rutgers was a slave owner. Cannot be reduced by the fact he could not imagine me. That's his problem, that's not mine. Yes?
So, just talking about the situation, Black Lives Matter, when you look at university campuses all across the country, about 85% of all of the professors, there going to be some effort here that dynamic in some way. I think you have to ask yourself, this university, founded in 1760, first African American community. How do you feel like?
So I can give you a quick answer to the first question. Is it going to change? Yes. You didn't ask for a timeline, though. Well, remote learning is not going to be with us forever. It's going to be part of what I think a 21st century university has built into it, some aspects of remote learning to amplify what we do. But we'll get on the other side of this virus. I don't know when, and we'll come back. And the fact is, we have to be very mindful at Rutgers and other state universities where we have limited resources as compared to very wealthy schools about having our faculty rated. And especially our underrepresented minority faculty. That's just smart business if you're at one of the other schools. So this is a concern that I have. So we will do everything that we can to retain our talent, and I'm very committed to making sure that we do more to change the ratios within higher education. But this is not Rutgers' work to do alone. This is, I benefited, my grad school, much of the cost of my grad school was defrayed by a Ford Foundation fellowship, which was then a pre-doctoral fellowship, which paid for most of my grad school. And that fellowship was explicitly designed to result in this moment, where you have grad students from underrepresented minority backgrounds getting into the professoriate and moving up the ranks. I started grad school 30 years ago, this fall 30 years ago. And here we are at this moment. And this is a moment where my good friend Dwight McBride, who I met through the Ford Foundation Fellowship, he started his presidency of the New School at this moment. It's a long road to enact these kinds of changes. But if we aren't on that road and moving as fast as we can on it, I can promise you the numbers are not going to improve in my presidency. So we're going to be on the road, we're going to be on it. Now I have long since forgotten what your second question was.
History of this university, 1760.
Oh, yeah, yeah. What does it mean? I mean, I said this in my introduction in January. Why did it take 254 years? I mean, I may think I'm special. I'm not that special. So there is, if you look across the world of higher education, the numbers of African Americans specifically, I'm not talking about Latinx population or other just African Americans who are provosts, chief academic officers at the leading 65 universities, the Association of American Universities. 3 years ago when I joined that group of provosts, we set a record. We were the 4 of us who are African American who are provosts of the 65. The provost being the chief academic officer at the university, number 2. So, and now there are fewer because 2 of us are now presidents. So the numbers are still really quite small everywhere. What does it mean? I mean, to say that I'm proud of it, I'm proud of the fact that I'm the president, certainly, of course. It's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of good luck, a lot of support along the way. I was the first dean of Yale College. I was the first African-American dean of Yale College, the first African-American provost at Northwestern. I shouldn't still be the first. You know, I've been a senior administrator this is my 7th year now. And I will only ever be the first in my career, as I imagine, you know, if there's another step after Rutgers. I'm certain whatever that step will be, if it comes, I'll be the first X to do X. I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good, you know? I think that's an indictment of the ability of our society to imagine excellence. And one of the things that I think is so wonderful at Rutgers is that I think it has demonstrated through facts, maybe not through rhetorical, but through facts of who it has educated and who has trained, that excellence comes in many shapes and sizes and colors. And certainly in my presidency, I'll be talking about that quite often, that excellence looks like everybody. It's not the same one race or not the same one gender. It's everybody. Sometimes it's hard to define. Sometimes it requires more resources to make sure someone can get caught up to where others are because of private education or tutors, whatever. But excellence is everywhere, and we are hurting ourselves as a nation if we don't recognize that, much less a university. Yes?
Going back to the remote learning hybrid, faculty and staff, are we on campus,
What was the last part you said?
what percent
Oh, okay. You know, I actually don't know the percentages. I mean, one of the things that you saw a couple months ago when presidents were declaring that we'll be back in business full time, you did not see mention in those op-eds about staff or about faculty. It's really kind of poor form as far as I'm concerned. By and large, the students are going to be okay because of what we know about this virus. It's the staff and the faculty who are at much greater risk. And we certainly are hearing more and more faculty saying, I'm not coming back. This is we in higher education, not specifically to Rutgers. I'm not coming back until there's a proven vaccine. So I literally couldn't tell you the numbers. I mean, the provosts may be able to tell you that number, but I still think they were waiting for this announcement to come, and then we'll know more in a month's time. That's all I am able to say at this point. Yes?
Just to follow up on the question, when it comes to faculty, a lot of these universities are suddenly backtracking. Faculty is saying, we don't want to come back from your illness.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, have you surveyed faculty? Has the union said anything to you concerning how many want to or won't come back? And if they don't want to come back, where do you stand on these people? Because these children are missing out on an incredible experience by remote learning, and also missing out on a lot of dollars by learning from home.
Missing out on a lot of dollars.
Spending a lot of money.
Oh.
And not getting a full experience of college.
Right. I have not surveyed anybody. I've been president for 5 days. But I know that the chancellors and their provosts have been engaged with their faculty. I cannot quote you numbers. I'm unable to do so I don't have that information. I'm forgetting parts of what you also asked me. Could you repeat?
Where do you stand on these people?
If they don't come back to work. My concern is their health and their safety. And because we now have had, by the time we open up the new academic year in late August, will have had, 4 months or 5 months to tool up people so they can be much more comfortable using technology, that if they do not feel safe coming to campus and they are able to teach remotely, then we respect that. I mean, it's not for me to force somebody coming to work in this environment. That's an indecent thing to do. Now, I want people to be honest about, their ability to come and work, their comfort level coming to work, et cetera. So we have to have a leap of faith that we are both, it's a terrible metaphor, both leap, I don't know. We have to trust one another, basically, in this regard. I have not spoken to union leaders on this issue at all. I mean, I've spoken to several leaders of faculty unions as far as my transition, but it's introductory video conference, get to know you thing. So, and I want to make clear, I'm not the negotiator for the university either. I have to carry the weight of the decision, but I'm not the negotiator. So that work is being done with the labor management team specifically. Yes.
Chuck O'Donnell from New Brunswick. And the healthcare professionals at Rutgers, many of whom were called upon to assist in COVID-19 emergency. Correct me if I'm wrong, they've been working on a contract that expired a little more than 2 years ago. Where do you stand with negotiations with them? And quite frankly, I'm wondering if you're worried about how that looks for Rutgers. These people kind of ran in when there was a health emergency, and they're saying, well, give us a contract.
Again, I'm not the labor management, the management negotiator. I don't represent management negotiations with the unions. I do know that contract has not been signed. I had sincerely hoped, as you can imagine, that it had been done before I arrived. I've spoken with the two heads of those respective unions in an introductory way, and they talked about these are the things that are important to us, but it was not my place 6 weeks ago to even offer an opinion beyond saying hello. My hope is that what I understand is that it's not that a contract hasn't been offered, they just haven't agreed to it yet. And labor management have not agreed on the contract. So I can't say more than that at risk of misrepresenting one side or the other. Because my facts on this are my grasp of the facts is not what I want it to be. But of course I'm concerned that we don't have a contract signed with this particular group of people who've been doing quite amazing work. And hopefully we'll have that solved soon. It's a complicated moment, absolutely, but I'm hopeful. Pete, I see you leaning in. Are you?
I got one final question.
Okay.
If there is no football season,
Yes.
will you be going to your peers at Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State, anyway, and boasting about your undefeated season?
Of course I will. That's right. Exactly. Thank you all for coming. Thanks so much. Thank you.